say every secret eventually rises to the surface. And Meghan Markle's past, oh honey, it's one that was never meant to see the light of day. Long before the world knew her name, long before she ever wore a royal title or held Prince Harry's hand before cameras, there was a story quietly whispered among those who once knew her best. A story she prayed would stay buried forever. Because in that world she left behind, one man carried the key to it all, Markus Anderson. Her friend, her fixer, her confidant, and the man who once warned, never bring this up around Meghan. Because this particular story, this yacht story, was the one that could shatter the perfect image she built piece by piece. It starts in Nice, France, February 2002. The sky that weekend looked painted, the Mediterranean glittering like glass under the sun. Off the coast, a Greek millionaire's yacht floated silently, its deck shining, champagne chilled, and crew moving like ghosts preparing for one special guest, Prince Andrew. Back then, he was power-wrapped in charm, a man who could make or break reputations with a single phone call. But before he even arrived, someone else stepped onto that boat, and her entrance didn't go unnoticed. She was small in frame but big in presence. Her smile bright, her voice confident, her ambition almost visible in the air around her. That was Meghan Markle. Not the Duchess yet, not even a name people knew. Just an actress with more dreams than credits and a determination sharp enough to cut through any room she walked into. She told people her father was a Hollywood lighting director, that she'd landed a TV role in a medical drama, and get this, that one day she'd become the first female president of the United States. The way she said it, not like a dream, but like destiny. Everyone laughed politely, but some couldn't help noticing how she looked at every powerful man on that deck as if calculating her next move. So when the yacht's captain finally announced His Royal Highness Prince Andrew, Meghan's entire demeanor shifted. She straightened her back, fixed her hair, and locked her eyes on the staircase as if she'd been waiting her whole life for that exact moment. And, when their eyes met, it was like the air changed. Prince Andrew, known for his confidence, suddenly seemed captivated. Witnesses said it didn't even take half an hour before she was by his side, laughing, leaning in, brushing his sleeve like they'd been old friends. And soon enough, believe it or not, she was sitting right on his lap in a little white bikini, whispering in his ear while he grinned like a schoolboy. The crew saw it, the guests saw it, and the whispers started right there. From that moment, Meghan wasn't just another guest on a yacht, she was the event. People whispered she was playing a role that didn't need a script, one written by pure ambition. And Prince Andrew? He didn't seem to mind one bit. The music rose, the champagne flowed, and as the French coast glimmered in the distance, something quiet but scandalous began brewing below deck. Because when night fell, Meghan and Andrew disappeared. Just like that, down the narrow staircase, into the private cabins, and they didn't come back up. Not that night, not the next morning, not even the day after. For 3 full days, the prince and the young actress vanished beneath the deck. Crew members slipped trays of food and bottles of wine outside their door, pretending not to wonder. But everyone knew. They heard the whispers, the laughter, the creaks of the boat in the still of night. It became the kind of secret that turns into legend one. Nobody admits, but everybody remembers. By the 3rd day, even the yacht staff had stopped pretending. They all knew where the prince was. They all knew who he was with. And Meghan? Someone overheard her saying earlier that weekend, "I've got my prince at last." Maybe it was a joke, maybe it wasn't, but by the time the yacht docked again, everyone knew she wasn't just another actress chasing fame. She was a woman with a plan, and she'd made sure the right man saw her. When the trip ended, the salt air clinging to everyone's clothes, Meghan didn't disappear into the background. Oh no! She stayed in touch with Theo, the millionaire's son, his girlfriend Melanie, and even Bob, an Australian backpacker who'd witnessed every shocking bit of that weekend. Through their conversations, a picture slowly formed. Meghan and Prince Andrew hadn't cut ties when they left that yacht. The connection continued, phone calls, private messages, subtle exchanges. For her, it wasn't over, it was just beginning. But things change fast when royalty is involved. Because when Prince Andrew returned to London, the fairy tale cracked. Meghan called his official line his palace office number, not his mobile, and waited. No answer. She called again. Still nothing. Then one day, the line went dead for her. According to those close to the situation, Andrew's team had been instructed not to put her through at all. Meghan kept trying, but the silence was deafening. What she thought was a future connection suddenly turned into rejection. And that rejection cut deep. For Meghan, those 3 days below deck weren't just a fling, they were her breakthrough, her big chance. But now, the man she thought might open royal doors was pretending she didn't exist. And yet, she wasn't ready to let go. Because, as later revealed by Melanie through whispers passed to journalists, Meghan had a secret of her own. One she thought might make Andrew pick up that phone. She believed she was pregnant. The news sent her into a quiet panic. She kept calling, trying to reach him to tell him, to make him respond. But his office never relayed her messages. Every attempt was ignored. Prince Andrew had moved on, while Meghan was left alone with a decision that could change her entire future. According to those who knew her back then, she made that decision quietly, painfully. She ended the pregnancy, not because she wanted to, but because she saw no other way forward. A child tied to a man who refused to acknowledge her would destroy everything she was trying to build. And she was already moving in powerful new circles, people connected to Washington, to George Bush's Senate circle. She wasn't about to let one secret undo the empire she planned to create. And so, she buried that chapter deep. Years passed, decades even. Meghan reinvented herself. She met Harry, married into the royal family, became a global sensation. The world called her a modern fairy tale, but no one knew the shadow lurking behind that smile. No one knew about Nice, or that yacht, or the prince she had chased before Harry ever entered the picture. Until one day, almost 20 years later, the past quietly resurfaced. During the Queen's Jubilee in 2022, two of the old witnesses ran into each other by pure chance. Bob, the same Australian backpacker who had been there that weekend, met the woman who once shared Meghan's secret. Over drinks, the memories spilled out. The yacht, the whispers, the 3 missing days. Bob admitted he had seen it all but never spoken publicly because he didn't want his family dragged into a royal storm. He even told a Mail on Sunday reporter who offered him $10,000 for his identity, "You can tell the story, but never my name." And so, the story floated half-truth, half-rumor, resting like an anchor in history's dark water, waiting for someone brave enough to pull it up again. Because when you think about it, how different would Meghan's life be if Prince Andrew had answered that phone? After all those years, that single weekend still haunted the people who had seen it. You could almost hear it in their voices whenever Meghan's name came up, the hush, the glance over the shoulder, the quick change of subject, because the truth was too dangerous to say out loud. Everyone on that yacht had felt the electricity of that moment, the laughter that turned into whispers, the door that shut below deck, and the silence that followed. It became the kind of secret that grows heavier the longer it's kept. And Markus Anderson, Meghan's old friend, knew it best. He'd been the one she called whenever she wanted to erase the past. To outsiders, Markus looked like a loyal companion, stylish, discreet, always smiling at her side. But those who knew the inner circle say he was the one who carried the stories she couldn't afford to repeat. And when people asked him about that yacht in Nice, he'd tense up, shake his head, and change the topic faster than lightning. That part of her life, he once warned, doesn't exist anymore. But secrets like that never die. They just wait for the right moment to resurface. When Bob, the same Australian backpacker who'd been invited onto the yacht, met the old acquaintance during the Queen's Jubilee, the whole buried truth began breathing again. They were older now, calmer, with lives that had moved on. Bob had a wife, a baby on the way, and absolutely no desire for scandal. But over drinks, nostalgia loosened his tongue. He began telling the story he'd spent 20 years keeping inside, how Meghan had charmed everyone that night, how she disappeared below deck with Prince Andrew, how the crew whispered behind closed doors and pretended not to notice the empty lounge chairs each morning. He said it almost sadly, not with hatred, not with pride, just like a man unburdening himself. And when the woman asked if he'd ever told the press, Bob laughed. "They offered 10 grand for my name," he said. But money isn't worth the mess that would follow. So he kept his anonymity, but allowed the story itself to float back into circulation. And once it did, there was no stopping it. Within weeks, journalists began circling. The whispers reached London. One tabloid editor called it the lost chapter of Meghan's life. Another called it the affair before the fairy tale. None dared print it outright, not with the palace lawyers sharpening their pens, but every newsroom had the same question: could it be true? Yet Markus's silence, Bob's confession, the fragments of memories from that yacht, they all keep circling back, refusing to disappear. Even now, insiders whisper that certain senior royals know more than they'll ever admit. That somewhere in a private file, there's a record of that weekend, names, dates, maybe even photos. It's locked away, never to see daylight. Because if it did, it would rock the monarchy from inside. And so the story remains in the gray, not confirmed, not denied, just existing like smoke, impossible to hold, but impossible to ignore. Whenever Meghan appears on television now, poised and radiant, some of those old witnesses can't help but remember that younger version of her, laughing in a white bikini, toasting champagne beside a prince, dreaming of a future she nearly seized. They remember how confidently she said, "I'm meant for greatness." And maybe in a twisted way, she was right, because the scandal she buried became the fuel that pushed her higher. The woman who once vanished below deck reemerged years later to stand beside another prince, wearing a crown of her own making. Still, the question lingers like an echo through royal corridors. If Andrew had answered that one call, who would Meghan Markle be today? Maybe not a duchess. Maybe not a global icon. Maybe just another forgotten name in a scandal that never made the news. But fate had other plans, and the silence of one man reshaped the destiny of another. And now, whenever anyone mentions Markus Anderson's name, those who know the real story glance away, lower their voices, and say, he knows too much. Because he does. He's the gatekeeper of a chapter that, if ever told in full, could break the illusion the world still believes in. That's why the tale keeps resurfacing every few years, a reminder that behind every polished interview and glowing headline lies the messy, unfiltered truth of who Meghan once was. The yacht, the prince, the phone that never rang, it's all part of the mythology now. But to the ones who were there, it's not myth, it's memory. And it's one they'll carry, quietly, for the rest of their lives. Because secrets don't disappear. They just wait for the tide to turn again